1. To really understand this story, or maybe how it happened, you need to know a few things. I live in Belgium, and at the time of the events, 2018, I lived at home with my parents, siblings, older brother and sister, and my sweet dog. Looking back now, maybe my dog was a bit too sweet. Also important to note is that my family is all over the place. Everybody is always busy doing something. Everyone has a very different rhythm, and some days we live next to each other instead of with each other. So that is why, at the time, I didn't really know who was home and who wasn't. We do love each other. So in 2018, on a school night, I woke up to some noises in my room. I was confused and looked at my phone. It was around 3 a.m. You know that feeling when you wake up very abruptly and don't know if you're dreaming or awake? That was kind of how I felt. There's a street light right at my window, so even though the curtains were closed, I could still make out some silhouettes and figures. As I just woke up and wasn't really thinking, I thought the silhouette I saw in my room was my older brother. I was sleep drunk, as you could call it, and I started asking him what he was doing, but he didn't really react. I saw him walking towards my jewelry, and I asked him again what he was doing. Again, my brother didn't respond. I was still laying in bed and began to feel very angry because I had school the next day and had to get up early. And as you do with irritating siblings, I started to curse him out. "Chope, get the F out, I have school tomorrow." This time he looked at me, but again didn't say anything. He started to walk toward my handbag and started looking at it and taking things out. At this point I was just angry at my brother and finally got out of bed. Mind you, the lights are still off. I walked towards him and asked him again, "What the F are you doing? Get out!" And I physically started pushing him slightly towards the door. Then he spoke. "Where's the money? Where's the money?" in this very strange, almost fake accent. And seriously, I started laughing it off. I still thought it was my brother. "Okay, I don't know if you're drunk or just being an a-hole, but get out." By this time, we were almost at the door. I was still pushing him out. He left and I closed the door. Finally, I thought, as I went back to bed. But I started feeling unsettled. I got nervous and scared and started thinking it over. Didn't I smell cigarettes? Chope doesn't smoke. Why would he act so strange? Just to be sure, I texted my brother, "Where are you?" His answer made my heart sink to my knees. "I just left the gym. Home in a minute." I immediately called him and frantically explained that there was just someone in my room. I started crying as I was panicking and asking him what to do. He said to call the police and stay in my room, as the gym was really close to our home. My brother came home, like literally a minute or two later. I was still upstairs on the phone with the police while I heard my brother yell a whole lot of curse words and "get out." At that point, I was in the upstairs hallway because my sister woke up and was standing there too. My father fell asleep downstairs on the couch, so when he heard my brother scream, he immediately woke up and knew something was wrong. He went to the downstairs hallway and saw my brother chasing the intruder. At this point, they were already at the front door. My brother managed to take a backpack from the intruder, but sadly he got away and fled. My brother did get a good look at him, though. So the police came, and I was actually in shock. All this time my mother was asleep because she's on strong sleep meds. She woke up during the chase when my sister and I were standing in the hallway. I was crying and she came up to us. I frantically told her what had happened. She said, "Ah, little one, that was a very bad dream." That's one of the things we still laugh about today. While we were talking to the police, we had to describe the person. I told them exactly what happened and how he looked. Due to the streetlight, I could see the clothes he was wearing. He had a hood on, so I didn't see his face, and when I was close, he always turned his back toward me. So I'm telling the police lady about his black pants and green hoodie. Then she abruptly stopped me. "Green? Your brother said light grey." That's the second time my heart dropped to my knees. There were two guys, not one. Both my brother and I were 100% sure about what we saw. So there had to have been two guys. They took a few iPads, phones, and wallets, but luckily my brother took the backpack, where there was a lot more valuable things that they didn't get away with. But the burglars were kind of stupid because we still had a Find My on all our Apple devices, and they were still running. A day later, when we saw the location, my brother jumped in his car with my father while on the phone with the police. Really, my brother is a badass. Going to the gym at night, he's in the military, chasing intruders through the house. I wouldn't F with him. They waited for the police, and they went in the house where the location of our devices was, and found one guy. He was crying, covered in his own piss and puke. They arrested him, and he confessed. He said he was high on drugs, and it was the first time he ever did something like that. He was very panicky and crying the whole time. My brother recognized him as the intruder he chased, so that meant the guy who was in my room was still out there. The guy snitched on the other guy, but he was nowhere to be found. We all kinda got on with our lives, but I was really scared. I slept with my lights on for more than a year, and every time I would be awake past 3 a.m., I couldn't go to sleep anymore. The intruder they caught went to jail for a year. He was a first-time offender, and is now in a rehab program. He sent us a letter or two with our consent, and we feel kinda bad for him. He was traumatized too. But half a year ago, when we heard that the second man was taken into custody, I was finally over it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the beginning, but of course I still got scared sometimes. But now they finally caught the man that was in my room. What we found out was unsettling, to say the least. While the dude that pissed himself didn't have a record before this happened, the dude who was in my room was a very experienced criminal. He had multiple possession charges, theft, drunk driving, and worst of all, assault and attempted homicide. The man I talked to, cursed out, and pushed out of my room at 3 a.m., was dangerous. And I'm very happy to be alive. 2. I'm a woman, and I bought myself a sex doll for Valentine's Day a couple years ago. It's actually stunningly realistic, especially considering what I paid for it. One night not long after the purchase, I enjoyed a rendezvous with my sex doll, and fell asleep with him still in bed next to me. I figured I'd get him put away in the morning, no big deal. Fast forward to about 3 a.m. I was asleep and woke up to the sound of glass breaking. I was petrified, but before I could make a move to get my phone charging across the room, I heard heavy footsteps approaching the door. So just froze, pretending to be asleep. It was mostly a fear response, but there was also a voice in the back of my head saying, if I didn't alert the intruder to my presence or engage with him, hopefully he'd just take the TV, or go through the medicine cabinet, or whatever he came looking for and dip out. But then I heard heavy footsteps bypass my living room, with a nice big, easy to detach from the wall flat-screen TV, then right past my bathroom, where one would naturally check for prescription drugs if that's what they were after. Then right by my study with my laptop charging in plain sight, with my desktop as well. The guy comes bursting through my door. I hear it smash open, and then I freeze, hoping if I pretend to be asleep, he'll carry out the safe from my closet, or better yet, realize the most valuable stuff is in the other rooms and leave. This had all happened in the space of 2 minutes, so I hadn't had time to form any coherent plan. I heard him getting closer and thought, you have to fight back before he gets too close. But then thought, what if he has a weapon? And what if you're mishearing? As he got within 5 feet of my bed, I heard him stop and go running out of the house. I called the police as soon as I was sure he was gone, but I was still in shock. I realized they'll be coming over and want to go through my bedroom as a crime scene, so quickly got some clothes on and put my doll in the closet. The police came and took my statements, and within a few days were able to track the guy down. It wasn't anyone I knew or had an affiliation with. It would later turn out we had 2 degrees of separation, but I didn't realize it at the time, and it didn't turn out to be very relevant. They questioned him, and he told them that he'd come to rob me. When asked why me, he said he'd been casing houses in the neighborhood for the last couple days, and mine seemed easiest because it was a single story with a sliding glass door and a woman who lived alone. But since nothing was taken, he went straight to my bedroom, and he hadn't parked anywhere near my place. Like you'd need to if you were trying to load up a TV, stereo, and get away with other heavy stolen goods. The police were doubting his story, and he kept asking me to think through all my interactions with him, and drilling down on whether or not there was anything I was leaving out. Because the two stories didn't make sense. Obviously, they considered that he was there to kidnap me or something, but I put up no fight and was still pretending to be asleep when he bolted from the house. The police and I were all confused. The police questioned him again, and then called angrily, asking me to come in and go over my statement. I did. I said it was all accurate. They looked at each other in a combination of frustration and disbelief, asking if I was sure there weren't any details I was leaving out, reminding me that they're on my side, that they wouldn't be mad if I just told them anything I might be leaving out. I assured them it was everything I remembered. Finally, they lay it all down that when directly confronted with, "Why didn't you steal anything if you were there to rob the place?" the assailant told them, "I was going for the jewelry drawer and to check for designer clothes because they're the most valuable and easiest to walk out with and get rid of. But when I got in her room, her boyfriend was sleeping over, so I left. I didn't want to risk waking him up. I wasn't looking for a confrontation." The cops asked why I didn't tell them my boyfriend was over, and why he didn't stay after the incident, and said that he needed to come in immediately to give a statement. That's what they'd been driving at me to come forward with all that time. They thought I'd been derailing the whole investigation by withholding this major detail. But I had no idea what the psycho intruder was talking about at first. I started to say, "He's obviously lying. I've been single since..." Then I realized. I sheepishly explained, and the cops and I had a good laugh over it. Even though they were laughing out of amusement and I was laughing out of embarrassment, but I think my sex doll might have saved my life, or at the very least, saved me a much more traumatic encounter that night. I've officially gotten my money's worth. Attempted assailant or robbery or who knows what else. Let's not meet. 3. Please be aware the following story, while containing no graphic detail, does contain a passing reference to a dog being beaten, and themes of domestic abuse. My first apartment after college was delightfully cute, secured with a couple my age that I had met through the PNW music scene. I was young, excited, and so ready to start living the dream in the big city. I started a job at a local elementary school working as a teaching aide for 3rd and 4th graders. I really enjoyed the natural exuberance and curiosity of children, and really gave my all to my students. I got to spend every day continuing to learn and play. And then went out to music shows and lived it up with my favorite people afterwards. How could life be any better? The neighbors on our floor were polite enough. They lived 15 feet down the closed hallway we shared. When we opened our door, there theirs was. They were a significantly older couple, so we didn't interact much. However, there were occasions where I'd interact with him while he had their cute little dog. For a few moments, while coming home with groceries or heading out to a show here and there, we would chat. To this day, I simultaneously regret and am relieved by the fact that we never exchanged names. I didn't know his name, and he never knew mine. I hope. I had moved in the week after I had graduated in May. The following January, I was waiting for a lift to take me to my partner's house. It was supposed to be there in 1 minute. That turned into 10, and felt much, much longer than that. I had been outside for 2 minutes when I turned to go back inside. I stopped, though, because I saw a stumbling shadow and heard it muttering. I stopped because it may have needed help. The shape in the darkness turned out to be my neighbor, drunk, and he put his hand on my shoulder to steady himself. We started talking, joking about how much he'd had to drink. Then he looked up at the window of his apartment and muttered, "I fucking hate that bitch. But I sure feel better once I see you every day." Time slowed down. What did he just say? Every day? But we didn't... Something inside stilled me, told me to listen, and to not talk. Just listen and figure out what exactly he is after first. Don't say anything, that comes later. I managed a weak smile as tears and screams dissolved deep inside. He kept talking. Told me how he'd watch me take out my garbage, do my laundry, wait to hear me, see me as I had my comings and goings. Which outfits he liked watching my body move in, what he wanted to do to me, how he'd felt that way since the moment he saw me on the day I was moving in. As I listened, I didn't just stay quiet, I listened, because I knew that there'd come a point where he stopped talking, and I'd have to fill the hole. And what I'd say would determine what happened next. The moment came. He was looking into my eyes, the way we had been the entire time. His hand on my shoulder slowly moving me towards the alley, away from the street. It was so slow, but I noticed. I slowed him right back, though. My toes were digging into the ground through my shoes, because he was too drunk to notice if I resisted there. But he would have felt it if I tightened up anywhere else. I had so much fear in my body as I played that fool. As I filled time begging and screaming inside my mind for that fucking car to come and get me. Where the fuck was the car? But I didn't do any of that. I told my now confessed stalker in a saccharine voice, a caricature of my own, that was sweet enough to assure him that I'd never been complimented like that before. That my own boyfriend never paid attention to my outfits like that. That it was so sweet of him to actually say these things. It was all bullshit, but I had to. If I had screamed, he would have moved his hand from my shoulder to my throat. If I stayed silent, he would have become angry, and his hand would have moved from my shoulder to my throat. I would have been in that alley in minutes. I kept going, complimenting him. My inner self detached, and watched as I somehow kept playing nice with him. I stared into his eyes, his face for all that time, but even now it only looks like shadows when I try to think of it. The car finally came. My stalker walked me to the car and waved me off. The gathering storm inside of me was quiet as the car started moving, and the shadow that I had first seen on the street that night drifted away. Once it was far enough away from us, the tears and screaming started. Then I couldn't sleep for 3 days. I lost my job on day 2 when I refused to come in due to not being okay with exposing the kids to a seriously traumatized adult, especially one that they looked up to and loved. My coworker told them that I was sick instead, and they sent me cards. I never saw my students again. I went to the hospital on day 4 when I knew that if I didn't go and finally sleep, I'd lose my mind. My blood work showed that I had developed a stress-related chronic illness. I called my landlord and the police on day 5. My landlord told me that the apartment was under her name and that he couldn't give his name to me. My stalker was not on the lease. The 3 police officers that came instead surrounded me and asked me about my mental health history, when I made the mistake of saying that I had been victimized before in a different way, and that I was having a difficult time emotionally processing what was happening to me because of it. I did everything right, and nothing came out of it. Day 6, I went to the door. I got called a whore by his girlfriend and had the door slammed in my face. I was too poor to move, I was too sick to move. My partner wouldn't let me move in with him. I didn't know enough people in the city. I was away from my family, and they were emotionally abusive. Staying with them was not an option. Nobody took my pain seriously. So I lived there until our lease was up in June. My roommates were sympathetic the first few times I asked them to come with me, to take out the garbage or do my laundry downstairs, but they couldn't do it every time. My heart broke like a child's. I felt like a little kid begging for help to escape the boogeyman in the closet. Nobody understood how terrifying and how painfully real he was. Nobody that was a person, that is. Thankfully, though, I wasn't alone. I was able to navigate that horrible, terrifying, exhausting period of my life that mainly consisted of sleeping and crying in my room, in between rounds of medication before checking and double-checking, and triple-checking the peephole, and listening through the door before quickly and silently doing chores, or darting out to live my life in small bursts because I had my cat, my sweet Ruby. She was the one living thing that never said a word but actually helped to protect me. Every time my stalker was in the hallway right outside of our door, she'd jump onto a little chair in our living room and stare at the door, intently with purpose. Because she was looking at him, because sometimes he didn't even make a sound, because she wanted to teach me to know when he was there, the way that she knew he was there. And I learned. He never caught me again. On the day I moved out, his girlfriend spoke to my roommate and told her that she wanted to apologize to me. Walking down that hallway towards that apartment felt like approaching a tomb. It felt emotionally dead, and she looked the part. She told me how he had abused her financially, physically, emotionally, how he'd beaten her dog and drank and forced her to let him be that way, how she was so terrified of him that it took her entire family to kick him out. I listened, again, the same way that I'd listened to her ex-boyfriend, because his departure had happened 2 months ago, and she didn't tell me or anyone. 2 months. I didn't have to filter fear this time, but rage. I listened to her, then got up, said thank you, and left. I assured her that I was happy for her freedom, and that I was now going to enjoy mine, and I did. Note: Ruby peacefully passed away about 2 years later with her little face in my hands, as I looked into her sweet warm eyes one last time. My tiniest hero and greatest friend made sure that I was safe as long as she lived with me, and I returned the favor. To Ruby, there are no words to adequately describe the voiceless, profound love that you channeled through your tiny body to me. A human lucky enough to have loved you for 2 beautiful, life-changing years together. Thank you for giving me the ultimate gift that will live with me always. My intuition. To my neighbor, my stalker, let's not ever meet again, because I may be the one to not let you leave next time. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 525. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. As promised, when I'm able to do it, I'll do 2 a week, so that's Mondays. I will be working my little tuchus off to try and get one ready for Wednesday. No guarantee it'll stay that way, but when they're available, I will do it. It's just the way it is sometimes. You go through periods where there are less of them. But that being said, the Police Hole stories that I've been doing in place of them, they're doing quite well. So when I'm able to, I'll pop those up on the Monday, and I'll save the True Scary for midweek. Okay. With that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.